Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Wacom Studio Comics. Hope you're having a great day. And today's video is going to be on foreshortening, so let's go ahead and get started. I had this request a while ago, and I've actually done a video on this before, but I don't know, I don't think it's the greatest. I think that there were some things that really need to be covered. So hopefully in this video I can really address some things and give you a better understanding of how I would approach foreshortening. Okay, so the first things first, foreshortening, the basic idea is that things closer to the camera will tend to be larger. So if you're doing, we'll say, a hand pose towards the camera, here's a blocky kind of hand shape that I use. Here's a forearm, here's a bicep, and a shoulder. This is just a very basic, just to get the ideas going of how I would do some foreshortening towards the camera. Okay, so that's a very crude hand structure, arm, and a very boring pose. And I want to show you some poses, full body, so that we can go over, not getting in the habit of just doing a basic, boring shot like I did here. What really makes a shot like this work anyways is when you take the arm right here and you have a little contrast with the other parts of the body. So now we'll place the head. I'll do the chest and maybe something like this. But the counter pose or the contrast that I'm speaking of would be where this part of the arm gets hidden. So maybe we turn the torso a little bit more. Another thing to keep in mind is when the head shape and the torso are on different angles along with the pelvic, it gives a more dynamic feel to the body. But this is mainly foreshortening, so I won't get too much into that. But what I want to show you is that, this arm looks okay, but then as soon as you take the other arm and you tuck it back here, maybe have him doing a clenched fist or something like that, you now make this arm more impressive. So just keep in mind that a lot of the things in your composition or your drawing reflect off one another. So that's very important to keep in mind when you're trying to do foreshortening, because you can make the object that's coming out to the camera more impactful. And excuse me for this real lumpy, crazy shoulder. This is just our thumbnail at this stage. But you can make it look more impactful by the contrast that you use with the other objects in the scene, the other body elements or whatever. And that doesn't just apply to the body. It can apply to the way that you frame the character, the other elements in the scene. Sometimes I think it's really neat when you see artists take abstract elements or background elements and they turn it into a way to contrast the pose, or give it just like a cool geometric feel to the artwork. So that's another thing that you can do. Command T here, size this down a bit, and K I believe is move, yeah. And then what I'll do is I'll usually rough something out like this, and I could keep going with this. I could go, okay, the arm is obviously projecting out like this. That's our perspective for that particular arm. This one is kind of not really in perspective, just going angled back to the body like that. Obviously the torso is going like this. We could shift the head shape and maybe tilt it more upright, and that might give us another different feel to the way we got the body going. So now for the legs and the pelvic, I could try to maybe counterpose the this leg up like this, and this one shooting down somewhere, something like that. And I won't get any more into the body. I just really want this to stand out better than just being a basic, boring, somewhat foreshortened pose. Now, I'm also going to show you a pose directly at camera, because a lot of people, I'll draw something and I'll call it foreshortening, and I've noticed in the comments in the section below on some of the videos, somebody or people will say, oh, how come nobody ever draws something directly at camera, the hand directly at camera, whatever. My answer to that is it's a little bit boring if you overdo that. You don't want to get in the habit of doing any one particular pose all the time. So a lot of guys go slightly off camera. It looks a little bit more realistic, or not so over overdone, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, but let me try to fix this one real quick. That shoulder's really bothering me, and I think the bicep should be, the bicep usually lines up with the thumb in most cases. So I need to probably just get a little bit of the tricep. And the forearm's going to look bigger. Keep in mind that each segment, as it gets closer towards the camera, is going to get larger. And a lot of styles these days in comics will actually indulge that or over accentuate that. And I'll show you what I mean with that as well. They may take like the hand here and draw it really big, or if it's a foot coming out towards the camera, they may draw that just huge, you know, and it looks cool. It's very stylized, and what it's, you know, resembling of is the like if you have something really close to camera, it dwarfs every other item in the scene. Also, if you have a really strong, I want to believe it's called field of view setting on your camera, then it'll also do that. It'll make something that's closer just really, really large. And forgive me if I'm getting the terminology wrong. I think that's what it's called, but I'm not entirely sure. So if you know better, then you're welcome to comment in the section below, and I will not fault you for that. This terminology is not my strong suit. So, you know, I just do something like this and clean it up a bit, you know, kind of keep adding structure and figure out, you know, the body type. And, you know, one thing I've noticed too in doing foreshortening like this is really tuck those items back. Like this shoulder, maybe have that disappear right behind the chest. And everything you do back here pushes this forward. So, you know, like I said, with the arm being tucked back here, to me it makes the hand more impressive up close here, or makes it look larger or more impactful. It's the same thing like if you were to draw two arms pointing towards the camera, you have to get them just right or it just doesn't look cool. It looks boring. Like, and I don't know what it is about that. You've got to really have the contrast in the body to make things look neat. Alright, and like I said with the head there, I kind of like the angle it's on, but I do want to try a different angle just because, you know, like I said, I know it looks more dynamic when you tend to make the angles different from the shoulders to the head to the pelvic. So we got the pelvic, if we were to draw like a dowel going to the side and the hip joints, it would be about there. The shoulders would be about here, and the head would be about here. So the head and the shoulders are pretty much the same. So let me go ahead and shift that a bit by tilting the head more upright, bringing it over to here. And I'll hurry up and get back onto just foreshortening. But I think this is important because foreshortening doesn't work as well if you don't take in some of these other basics to your structuring of your characters. So let's see if this works a little better. I think the head could still be up a little bit more. I give the character a bit longer, more extended neck. So somewhere in there, you know, it's not too bad. Okay, so we'll say something like that for our superhero-esque foreshortened pose. Let's get rid of the blue line. Yeah, it's alright. The hand's a little funky, but I would just keep embellishing upon it until I got it just about right. So I'll just erase some of this blue line. Actually, I'll just delete it all. How about that? Okay, so Command T. Size that down. K for move. Using Manga Studio, by the way. And also keep in mind too, Command T, and you can rotate your figure a little bit. It's another way to kind of change the dynamics of it. Another quick tip for you, if you're using digital means here, is Command Shift T, I believe. Yeah, Command Shift T, and you can warp the character. So if you really want to push the envelope of this perspective, so you can kind of play around with that and, you know, see if anything looks a bit better if you shift it a bit. And you can do that to each body component too. So you can grab your select lasso tool, which is right there. Condense that down. And I could lasso select just this arm. Command Shift T. And I could really try to push the depth of that shot, you know, just by moving this stuff around. And it's good to do this portion if you're going to do it in the sketch phase, in your thumbnail phase, because then you can mess with it a bit and you're going to draw your style over top. And this is what I was talking about with what's real popular in comics now. People will do something very dramatic, like, you know, and you got to be careful not to really overdo it, but it seems to be the style right now for a lot of stuff. So something like that. Like, to me, that looks, you know, too just overdone, you know, but it's cool. And you would balance that out again by, okay, for move, you know, say there was another character, maybe you draw that character in the scene really large. You know, they're just like, there's the shoulder, the face, the hair, whatever. So you see what I mean? So you would balance out that really drawn out perspective, that really intense, you know, perspective angle with that. So anyways, Command Shift T to mess with that a little bit more. I like my stuff a little less dramatic on the shots, unless I'm really going for that. And I'll use it sparingly if I do that other effect. So, okay, so now back to foreshortening and some more tips or techniques for that. One thing that I want to show you is, like, when drawing foreshortened characters, let's picture that, okay, now it's a upshot, or the character's flying at the camera, foreshortened, and I want the leg to be more in your face kind of thing, right? So what I want to show you is that keep in mind that one of the easier ways to do foreshortening in my method, or whatever, the way that I do it, is drawing the item that's closest to camera first. So we'll say it's just this flat foot coming out of the camera, or maybe a slight little angle. So to do the angle, you just put like the flat foot first, and a little bit of the leg, and then you just build backwards. And you can do that with circles or ovals or cylinders, whatever works for you. And, you know, we'll put a kneecap right here. We'll say that the leg's kind of flying out towards the camera like this, okay? So I can start with something like that, and I can build onto that. You know, I know that the leg obviously connects to the pelvic. You know, you got the other leg maybe, you know, over this way, kind of tucked in a little bit more. Maybe the other foot's pointing down. And maybe they're swinging from a rope towards camera, something like this. Okay, so real easy. I mean, just real crude, obviously, at this stage, but that's what you want. And that's kind of the nature of this. This is more thumbnailing, what I'm showing you here, and gesture drawing, but it also ties into foreshortening. Foreshortening becomes easier the looser and quicker you can draw your gesture lines. So even though this is really rough, I still have the necessary information I need to continue on and to improve my foreshortening. So I'll turn this to a blue line, I'll tone that down, I'll add another layer to draw over top, I'll clean it up. Now another method I like to do is I'll rough it in like this, turn it to blue line, and I'll grab the ink pen, and I use the G pen, and I just pretty much leave it on that pen the entire time. Okay, so now what I'll do is just, with a relatively thicker pen, I'll just gesture line it in. And I kind of picture that I'm using a Sharpie when I do this. And the reason being is that I don't erase when I draw like this. I might Control Z, and I try to keep that to a minimal. I'm trying to just capture the gesture of what I've put down and not embellish it. I'm not sketching at this point. I'm just trying to clean up the line work, keep the gesture that I wanted, and see into the design a little bit more. I'll do this for like quick studies, quick thumbnails, gesture drawings, whatever. And what I got this from, I used to do caricatures at parties all over my state, and you know, I would do them in pencil, and I was slower. And then one day somebody asked me to draw it in ink, and all I had were these kind of crude fat Sharpies, you know. And I was really intimidated by it, but I thought, you know what, that's what they want. I'm going to go ahead and give it a whirl. And I did it, and then I never went back. I actually liked the experience, and I just started drawing all my caricatures just with markers. And if I made a mistake, I just had to figure out a way to fix it and embellish upon it. I couldn't go back. There was no eraser on that. So it teaches you a lot, and it's really great for gesture drawing and figuring out, you know, a quick method to get to where you're trying to go with your design or your art. So I think it's important to experiment with that. So we'll just go ahead and take this guy. You know, we've cleaned up the artwork a little bit. I made sure to keep this foot larger. You know, always give the hands kind of a cool angle from one another, which this is just, you know, clinched onto a rope or something. So there's our quick little gesture, you know, with just a few lines. I mean, you could almost count the lines that I put in here. Not a whole lot of detailing. And that's why I like using this marker effect, because it forces me to not get into sketching and not get into shading like I even did over here on this guy, and just focus on the shape and the character. And as far as the foreshortening, you know, if I was to look at this another way, they got this leg coming out like this. Okay, so that's the perspective of that leg. This one's just kind of going like this. It's not really foreshortened much. It's a little bit larger than you would picture the arms being here. And then the more the arms are pointing back, the torso and the arms are going back like that. So those are our perspectives and our foreshortening in that shot. All right, so let me condense that down. Command T. Scale that down. Okay, so there's an arm coming out, there's a leg and a kind of swinging action towards camera. Now let's go ahead and do one that is going to be directly at camera. So I'll go back to sketching, and like I said, the reason I don't do this a whole lot is it's just, you want to really use this sparingly, but it is a good shot for, you know, certain, you know, angles or whatever, or certain impactful scenes. But I'm just going to go ahead and use my little circle method to draw some fingers coming right out towards camera. So maybe this guy is reaching for a candy bar or something. I don't know. And it's the last one on the shelf, so it's got to be a very impactful reach. You know, like, I gotta get that last candy bar. I don't know. Whatever. But this is how I would foreshorten something like this. It's very towards camera. I mean, the only way it could get more towards camera is if I did the pointed finger right at camera, right? Where it just goes, you know, you can barely see the rest of the knuckles. That's the other thing to keep in mind with foreshortening. The more foreshortened you're drawing, the less you're going to see each segment or each area behind that, the one closest to camera and the one that I tend to draw first. So if you're doing the pointed finger, it would do something like this. You know, just very extremely foreshortened. And then you'd get just little glimpses of stuff behind it, like a little bit of the forearm, almost none, probably none of the bicep, a little bit of the shoulder. You know, and that's it. I mean, you might even get a little bit of the bicep, or I'm sorry, the forearm below the hand here from this angle. You know, so it's really kind of, I don't know, it's kind of tough to envision, but that's all it is. It's you're actually seeing less. So let me Control Z back, or Command Z. All right. So on this one, same thing. You're going to get a little bit of the forearm, like this. And keep in mind, a forearm generally from this angle actually is this, kind of does this shape right here. So the muscle comes around, something like this. You can see that. It's like picturing there'd be an opening right here for the wrist. That's kind of how I see the forearm from this angle. And this part that's bent in, the separation of two muscles, it's pretty much where your bicep is, like this. That usually lines up with the thumb. So that's the other little quick rule. You got the hand like that, the thumb here, if you can see that. But so here's our thumb. Here's that bend I was telling you about, but it's kind of hidden from this angle. You know, a little bit of the forearm down here. Okay. Now, depending on how extreme this is towards the camera, again, you're only going to get a little bit of the bicep, if any at all, and then the shoulder. Something like that. There's the chest, tricep, lat, rib cage, like that. So it's going to look something like that. I mean, that's, I don't know. I don't know if that's right, but it's how I would draw it. And then I would convert that to blue line, tone it down, add another layer, zoom in, and clean up. And I just pretty much repeat that process with anything that I do. And I'm not saying it comes out right every time, or it's, you know, right or wrong way to do it. It's just the way I do it. So take it as you will, and take it and run with it, and try your own thing. And then as far as filling in this anatomy, this is just where your knowledge of your anatomical drawing comes in. You know, little things like the fingers have 3 segments and they have a good sized gap in between fingers. I used to always draw my fingers like this, where it was like finger, 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 and I never worried about the gap in between. So keep that in mind, that the fingers actually do have a pretty decent gap from finger to finger. And unless the hand's on more of an angle, then you're going to see that. Let's see here. Alright, just trying to fill this in real quick. And you got these little pads under the finger like that, or the bone. I think that's actually the bone kind of showing through. And you got the separation from the top part of the hand to the lower part and the thumb, these little wrinkles on the side. So all that's just your knowledge of how you draw your, you know, your anatomy, your characters, whatever. Ribs, and the ever impressive lat. Now the other thing to stress upon you when you're doing foreshortening like this is that the area that is closest towards camera is going to have the nicer, heavier lines. It's the other thing to really push your foreshortening really out to the viewer. So the lines generally work on thicker on the shadow side, like this, a little heavier on the bottoms or whatever, and then thicker all the way around for the areas that are closer to camera. If you do that, then your stuff will pop out more. The other thing is, say this was an area where this was all blocked out in shadow, then I might do something with a cool little white highlight around this hand, and then smaller back here or non-existent back here. And again, it would also, when this goes to get inked, it would really make this hand pop out of camera. Another thing that you can do to do that is when you bring your border to this hand, you could maybe have it pop out a border just like that. And all of a sudden, this hand starts to really jump off the page a bit more. So those are just little tactics, you know. But the main and most important one is just the line weight, to really add these heavier lines on the objects that are closer, and then the thinner lines back here. The other thing is to spot your shadows where they also complement this or accentuate this. And for instance, say here's the arm and this thumb here, and I want this to jump out. Well, a good place I could throw a shadow is right under the chest and the lat area, and it will also help me to push this hand and thumb and everything out there. So maybe I put, you know, a shadow around here, do some fancy schmancy cross hatching, whatever. And again, it helps me to push this out further. So hopefully that's helping you to understand the foreshortening a little bit better. Let me make sure there's nothing else I can cover. Command E to merge those layers down. I'll move that up. Okay, so we've got, you know, the off-camera, slightly angled foreshortening here, the counterpose and the hand tucked back, which is important. If you start looking at your comic drawing, you'll see that a lot of guys go with that to really stretch the pose. The one larger limb here to be foreshortened towards camera. The directly at camera, because I've had people ask about that, like why I avoid that or whatever. So there it is. You know, it's just, I think it's almost not that impressive to explain, because it's like, it's essentially you draw one item real large and the rest tucked behind it. And even this could be changed. Let me show you where you could actually grab this, hit move. I mean, it really, the more it's coming at camera, the more it's just going to come in front of the other parts of the arm, shoulder, and all that. And the fact that it's also just going to get larger the more it comes out towards camera. And lastly, I'll do one more foreshortened pose, because this is important. It's important for people to practice these gestures right here. Okay, so I want a character coming out towards camera. We'll do head first is always easier for me. So put the head coming closer to camera. We'll have one arm up, kind of, you know, coming out towards camera. We'll say like this. Okay, so what I'm seeing there is, if I had to draw this a little easier for you to understand, wrist. Here's the elbow, shoulder. Okay, there's the head. We'll tuck the other shoulder back, way back and up like this. So the shoulders are actually, if I had to draw again a dowel across, the other shoulder's back here. And I want this to pretty much disappear. And then I want the other arm, again, counterposed. And here's the thumb, the fingers, and the fist and all that. It's always got to be a fist. Everybody's a tough guy in comics. And then the hand will now be, I don't want to do another fist. We'll do the fingers, kind of just pointing out, rotating down. And then the chest. Now, since the body is foreshortened more extremely, I want the back to even show more. So you got to figure, the more this upper torso begins to push downward like this, the more you're going to see the back above his head. So we'll do like the shoulder blade, or half of the, I guess shoulder blade area, like that. A little bit of the chest. So the more this starts to show, the less of the chest, you know. And then this is going to be real extreme, so we'll do the counterposed leg. You know, this arm is furthest out, so for balance, we'll bring this leg furthest out, like so. Here's the knee. And then we'll tuck this leg way back, and we'll do the little tiny leg thing. Little tiny leg. Little tiny foot. Look how little his foot is. But you know, that's all in the hopes of making this stand out more. So it's kind of a, I don't know that I would do it that straight back, but we'll just go with it for now. This doesn't got to be perfect. So the other foot here is going to be larger. It might even not even get seen. The more this leg is tucked, the more this foot will start to go back and then eventually just disappear behind this leg. So we'll do something like that. So you see it's very rough. You probably can't even see what I got going on here with the hand, but I know what I was trying to do. So I'll go ahead and blue line that, tone it down. Now I'll get in here with one more layer and the ink pen. And again, I use this just because it forces me to just think about what I was trying to put down with that really rough sketch. This isn't the area where I'm refining my artwork, so don't get me wrong there. This is just me trying to see my thumbnail a little bit cleaner. Then I would still go back and redraw this entire thing and clean it up and add, you know, the suit, what type of character. At this stage, I don't even know who this character is. I'm just having fun and throwing down a pose. But the more you can get yourself to not block your creativity by thinking about too many details at this stage, the better. the better it's going to come down, the more organically you're going to put it down, and be able to worry about that other stuff, the minutia, afterwards. So there's the elbow. Okay, so now the only part that I want to think about a little bit more, because I don't want this hand to look too awfully bad since I didn't draw it out too well. I'll size the brush down a little bit. So there's a finger coming out, another one, and the more you tuck these segments back behind the first one, the more it's going to look like it's coming out closer towards camera. So if I do these lines like really quick behind the next, see if I can explain it better here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And see how I spread them out more here because this finger is pointing down, not towards camera. So you got to practice it, but that's basically how you can get a pretty cool foreshortened hand. Just basically how you do these little, we'll call them stretched out C's or something. One, two, three, just like that. And the separation of the hand. And I gave him a little hand. Goodness. This is awkward and embarrassing. Hope nobody's watching. No, I take that back. I hope everybody's watching. Okay, so let's just give him a big hand. And that's the beauty of digital. Which, don't feel bad if you're a traditional artist. Don't think that you can't do what I just did there. Whenever I say that's the beauty of digital, it just means you need a light table. And I have one sitting behind me, staring at me intently. No, I use my light table all the time. I love it. And you can make one out of a window. So if you don't have one, just find a window. All right, so here's the leg. I'll do a little of the anatomy, not much. I think I'll go with the foot that's further back right there. Another thing, real quick, even though this isn't on foreshortening, but it does help, to really make this stuff pop out, you'd put a nice heavy shadow right in here. See that? Makes the chest pop out, makes the leg segments from the leg to the chest, even helps to push this hand out further. The other thing is this leg right here. Got the little kneecap, the little leg, little tiny little foot. My little leg. It's my strong leg. All right, anyways. Then you just take this and maybe do some cool, thick to thin lines like this. And you can push that. You see how it's all starting to really push this hand out. And that hand's still a tad small. So I'm going to grab that like so. And just go a tiny bit bigger. And maybe tilt it. I don't know. Something like that. All right. I'm getting too much into the details, so I'll stop there. But that's all you really do. And then past that, you just play around with it. You just got to, you really want to draw a lot of these type of thumbnails. You really do. I can't stress that enough. The more you do those, the more you'll have a comfort level with making this kind of stuff. And just worry about the details later. The details will come. And I know that's the fun part. It's definitely the fun part for me. I like the rendering. But it all starts here. So you got to get this out of the way. And then the rest becomes easier. And I'll tell you what, if you master foreshortening, the rest does become a lot easier, because foreshortening is one of the trickiest things. I mean, you could see I struggle with it. If you've followed this whole video, you see it, it's not entirely easy for me. I just kind of endure it and try to make the best of it. So at any rate, hopefully this video has been helpful for you. Sorry I dodged it for so long, and then give me some time and I'll do a better one as I go. As I've said before, as I learn, I share that with you. So this is just basically my art journey that, hopefully we can all grow together and learn some stuff and have some fun making comics. So thanks very much for tuning in and watching. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. Helps me progress the channel. And as always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and we will talk to you soon.